edition of the Net Profit College Basketball Show. It is Friday, December the 2nd. Ian Cameron and Conor Mack ready to break down the Friday college basketball slate. It is a Friday card that's looking like the same size that it probably will be for many Fridays to come, especially in the new year when you're going to have a lot of Ivy League, Horizon League, Metro Atlantic basketball, a lot of the smaller conferences, the mid-major conferences, if you will. But we do have a few major conference games as well, and a lot of them will be featured in our marquee game segment. So we will get right into it, and we will start with one of the smaller games, and I put it in the marquee game segment. It really isn't a marquee game, but I'm a big Metro Atlantic Conference bettor, as many of you know. I do focus on this conference a lot and do pretty well with it. See if we can get off to a good start, because we've got Metro Atlantic Conference basketball tonight in a few instances, including this one, Canisius and Siena. Siena 7-point favorites at home, 136.5 the total. The only thing that would get me to want to take Canisius tonight is the fact that the Metro Atlantic historically is a pretty good underdog conference. The underdogs have done well in this conference in the past, and sometimes with a team that's not playing well for the early part of the season in non-conference, then they step into conference play. Teams know each other a lot better. A lot of times those struggling teams are actually bolstered and they benefit from getting into conference play. I don't know if that is going to matter here for Canisius, because this team has definitely struggled throughout the early part of the season. I mean, their only victories were they somehow beat St. Bonaventure 84-80 in overtime, but we know St. Bonaventure is kind of starting from scratch. And then they had a 98-52 win against Fredonia State, that juggernaut team that they beat there in that game. Other than that, though, for Canisius, it's been a rough start to the year, no question. They are a horrible, horrible defensive team, giving up 47.8% shooting, 37.5% from three-point range. They're equally bad in the rebounding department as well. And then you've got a Siena team that, is definitely superior to them. I mean, you look at them coming off a very solid win, 60-55 in the neutral court setting as well. Same with Florida State, who aren't very good, but still for Siena to beat them, you give them a lot of credit. They've got Jackson Stormo, Jace Johnson, and of course, Javian McCollum leading them at the offensive end of the court. Again, a Canisius team that's really having a tough time getting stops at the defensive end. I have a small bet on Siena -7, but I know this is a weird conference. It can act in weird ways that, a team that's really, really poor to begin the season, then they get into conference play. They all of a sudden show some life and more competitiveness. Maybe that's the case for Canisius here, but I can't put my money on them with what I have seen. They've been really, really scuffling early in the year. So small play here for me on Siena, but I'm keeping it small because of the tendency of underdogs to do quite well ATS here in the Metro Atlantic. What do you think here, C-Mac?
Shout out to NJ Stryker, new member here at Pub Sports Radio, just $4.99. Shout out to you, my man. Fuck yeah, nothing gets me more hyped.
Join the channel. $4.99 a month. We're not asking to pay, pennies on the dollar here. It's well worth it.
Exactly. And yeah, if you watch Hitting the Books, I wish Akron would have pulled off the upset. I had some money line on them, so hurt a little bit there, but yeah, easy cover on that one. Check out Hitting the Books too tonight for the game today, and then on Saturday, this is our last big one before we go bowling. Yeah, I'm off here. You mentioned when it gets to conference, it could get a little crazy. Canisius defensively isn't very good. I like a little bit what I've seen Siena defensively. I kind of lean under when these teams get together. Now we're in conference. I think you play the under in this game, and I like what I've seen out of Siena. I think they've played solid so far. So just don't love the 7. I'd look more to the under here.
Yeah, 67-64 was their last meeting last year with these two teams. So it shows you they're capable, definitely, of being involved in some lower scoring games. We'll see how this one plays out. All right, next up here, we've got Wake Forest and Clemson. Clemson 3-point home favorites, 142.5 the total. I'm back on the Wake Forest side again, just like earlier this week. Cashed a ticket with them at Wisconsin. They won that game in outright fashion. I think Steve Forbes has a coaching edge here over Brad Brownell. I don't like laying points with Clemson at all, to be quite honest with you. They are 5-0 here at, I believe they're still calling it Little John Coliseum here in Clemson, South Carolina. But when I look at Clemson, this is going to be one of the tougher teams they've played. They have had a couple games where they've played decent competition. Penn State, they won in overtime in their last home game. Iowa on a neutral court. They were competitive there, but they did lose at South Carolina, first game of the year. I like what I'm seeing out of Wake. Wake had that one loss against Loyola Marymount, but since then, their offense has been very fluid, getting the job done at that end of the floor. I just think in a game it's going to be competitive, but taking points with Wake Forest is well worth it here, in my opinion. And I think one of the difference makers could be rebounding, slight edge there to Wake Forest. In terms of defense, slight edge there to Wake Forest as well in terms of the defensive numbers. And actually, Wake Forest, even though Clemson's definitely taken strides of improvement at the offensive end, Wake's shooting the ball even better at 48.5%. Overall so far from the field. I like Wake here, plus the points. I'm going to trust them again here as road underdogs, just like the other night. Connor Mack, what do you think here, Wake Clemson?
That was a great win by Wake. Wisconsin a good team, but I don't know how great they'd be. Kind of probably going to be similar to they are every year, Wisconsin basketball. That late loss to Loyola, they have looked good. Here's the thing with Clemson. I lean Clemson here a little bit at home, but they shot the lights out against Penn State. That's what kept them in that game until they ended up winning it. So if they shoot it 40% from three, I've always talked about this team. If they shoot it well, especially at home, that's usually where they play their best basketball and have played well against Wake. I lean the other way here with Clemson. I haven't bet it, but I lay it with Clemson.
All right, like in Clemson here in this one. It is a tough the travel's a little dubious for Wake. I will say that. You go from Wisconsin now to Clemson, 2 road games in less than a week. So not ideal. We'll see if they can withstand that here tonight in that one. All right, next up as we continue along here on this Friday slate, we've got Niagara and Iona. Back we go to the Metro Atlantic. Iona 13.5-point home favorites, 129.5 being the total in this game. This is a great matchup and a fascinating one in terms of what we're going to get stylistically between these two teams. Of course, under Rick Pitino, Iona plays pretty fast offensively, faster, and pretty good offensive team. Niagara is about as slow as it gets in the entire country, and offensively can sometimes have droughts, but they are going to try to frustrate Iona, and that is the way they have continuously played during the last few years. Now, they've struggled on the road, 0-3 straight up, 1-2 against the spread. But if you actually look at some of the results we've seen against with these two teams head-to-head, Niagara, going back to 2018, they've actually covered 6 of the last 8, 6-1-1 ATS against Iona. And Iona's had some trickier games head-to-head against this Niagara Purple Eagles team, where Niagara's been able to frustrate them. Niagara's been good in the underdog role these last couple of games, beating Stetson as 4.5-point dogs, taking on St. John's in their last game, 78-70. A very impressive competitive effort from Niagara in that game against St. John's. Now we're into conference play. We are in a situation where the coaches know each other very well, and you have a better idea of how to game plan against them, which means sometimes in these conference games, and we've seen it with these two teams historically, it's difficult for Iona to consistently gain margin. I like Niagara here, getting this many points, 13.5, as high as 14 even in some spots. Greg Paulus, who played his college ball at Duke, been here for a few years, and he in this head-to-head matchup against Pitino has managed to keep his team in the game. So wouldn't surprise me if we get this a more competitive game than the point spread indicates. I like the Purple Eagles here, plus the points, Niagara. What do you think here, C-Mac?
I like the points here, too. I think we're going a little bit how great Iona was last year because we're so far early in the season, which has been all right. They lost to Oxford by 5, beat up on Vermont, and then just lost to Santa Clara. But I don't know, 13.5, 14. When you were ripped through it, that's what I was going to talk. When they meet, these games get tight. To me, I had this more 10, I thought, 9.5, 10. So I think there's value here with Niagara. Take the points.
Absolutely. Total agreement there. Both of us liking the road underdog. UMass, Harvard. Here we go. Harvard in action. We've got UMass, 1.5-point road favorites, 141 the total in this game. Nice little battle here in state. I like the over here more than a side. I lean UMass. I think UMass is the better of these two teams, but long-term, and I said this with Jimmy today on his show when we did the hoops, Harvard long-term at home and Harvard long-term home underdog is a good role for them. They've been very profitable. ATS is the Harvard Crimson in the home underdog role. I definitely think UMass is a little bit better than them. I don't know if this is the best Harvard team this year, but that might be enough to keep me off taking UMass, even though I think they could win this game. I do like points in this game. UMass is bringing that. Remember, Frank Martin, when he was at South Carolina, that was one of the faster pace teams in college basketball, trying to bring that kind of style here to UMass, 57th in the country in terms of tempo, very solid at the offensive end. Harvard is always pretty, solid offensively. They don't play as fast, but usually very efficient at that end of the floor. Harvard's defensive numbers look okay. They're going to be tested a little bit more, though. They haven't played a boatload of opponents that are going to push the ball in transition like UMass will. Could be something that challenges them a bit more than some other opponents they've played to this point. So I like the total more than the side over 141. Connor, anything here?
No, I think this is a kind of a coin flip. I like the couple of points by Harvard. I've been impressed with UMass. The Charlotte win, beat Murray State. They look good. The Colorado game, Colorado a little down as we saw them fold last night against Arizona State. Yeah, so this is tough. I just don't know if they should be laying the 2 here. You mentioned they might still be the better team, so coin flip here for me. I'm off.
All right, Pittsburgh and NC State. We've got NC State 10-point home favorites, 146.5 the total. This little point spread engine that is got me back on the train again tonight. Pittsburgh plus 10. I think it's a few too many points. I like what I'm seeing out of NC State. I mean, certainly 7-1 start is nothing to it's impressive, I should say, so far what they've done, and the only losses to Kansas, but they're laying a big amount of points. And you look at the Pittsburgh Panthers, since they got everybody healthy, they had a couple guys banged up, they got their entire complement back, including Hughley, who's been a big difference maker for them in the low post. And since then, they've won 4 straight. They've covered 3 of the last 4. They pounded the hell out of Northwestern, 87-58. And I like the points with them there, too, against Northwestern. I didn't think they'd go in there and just destroy Northwestern the way they did. Just a very impressive performance from Pitt here. I think, again, it's too many points here. And the one thing is transition defense is the key against NC State, who's going to look to push the ball in transition, push the pace. That's the way they play. Pittsburgh's actually been surprisingly good, under Jeff Capel, and including this year so far in the transition defense category. So keep NC State out of transition, get back when they look to push the ball, have numbers back at the other end of the floor when they try to get that ball up the court. That's significant. I think it's a close game. I think it's a competitive game, at least. It's a single-digit margin. I like Pitt plus the points. I'm going to look to ride them once again here tonight as a road underdog. I actually think this game could end up going over the total as well, because Pitt is a better offensive team. There's no question, since they've gotten everybody healthy. You're going to get an offensive-minded, aggressive, push the pace, push the ball in transition approach from the Wolfpack, as always. So I think this game could find its way over that 146.5. Connor, what do you think?
Yeah, let's stay on the total. I agree with you. I think this could just get over, just because the way NC State's been playing. And you talked about Pitt. The last 3 or 4 have looked a lot better. They've gotten healthy. You mentioned Henson's been good, 16 a game. I've been high on this NC State team, but this might just be stretching it to 10. I think this might be just too many points in this one. And I like how Pitt's been playing. I'd take the 10, and I'd lean over. I haven't bet this one, but I'd look that way.
All right, next up, we've got UT Arlington and LSU. LSU 19-point home favorites, 132 the total in this game. LSU laying a big number. LSU, look, the one time I did bet against them, it didn't go well for me in that game. I took Akron when they played LSU on that neutral court, and I'll tell you what, LSU was very impressive. I mean, there's nothing really you can say too much negatively about the Tigers. Defense has always been their issue, right? We always have condemned and criticized LSU for lacking at times on the defensive end of the court. But this 6-1 start for the Tigers so far this year, a lot of it has been because of improvement at that end of the floor. Right now, they're ranked 67th in field goal defense, 40th in three-point defense as well. But at the same point in time, I don't know if they're nearly as good offensively as they've been in the past. And one thing you'll get from Arlington, you'll get them trying to slow it down, play in the half court, really try to frustrate the opponent. And that's sometimes the style that can get under the skin of LSU. I mean, I've seen a lot of LSU basketball. They don't like it when the team is forcing them to execute in the half court on offense. And that's really when LSU can bog down, especially with me thinking that they might not necessarily be as good offensively as they've been in recent years. They've improved defensively so far, but maybe taken a step back at the other end of the floor. Arlington so far this season, they've been pretty much all over the map with their results, and they've had some ugly losses. There's no question. Drexel, Nevada, East Carolina, losing those ones by double digits makes you think maybe, LSU could end up running away with this one, but I don't think it's a great spot for LSU coming back, from a 3-game neutral court venue situation. And then that first game back, they barely escaped and survived Wofford with a 3-point win. They've got bigger games on deck with Wake Forest and others on their schedule. And in early December, in a lot of these home gyms too, you don't get the home crowd edge that normally you would. So I think Arlington as a plus 19 underdog can just do enough to keep this inside the number. And certainly this is the kind of style from an opponent that has frustrated LSU at times in the past. What do you think here, Connor? UT Arlington, LSU.
Yeah, I'll be quick here. I think it is just a bit too many. I don't want to go laying it with LSU. Talented, still need time. You mentioned the 328. Their schedule has been pretty easy. You'd have to go back. Arlington played, Oklahoma State. All right. That's what they need to do here. I just think it's too many. I don't love it, but I'd lean the points with Arlington here.
All right. Next up here, we've got probably the game of the night. It probably is Baylor and Gonzaga. We've got Gonzaga 2.5-point favorites, 160.5 the total. This is at the Sanford Pentagon, by the way, Sioux Falls, South Dakota. So this is a neutral court environment. Although situationally and location-wise, you would think it's going to be a bigger turnout for Gonzaga, a little bit better location for them compared to Baylor. But nevertheless, I still think you're going to get some Baylor support, no question. Although maybe you won't get as much after the embarrassment that they gave to their fans the other night against Marquette. I don't think that had the Baylor fans too happy. Just got absolutely torched defensively by the Marquette Golden Eagles the other night, which got anything they wanted offensively. So there's been this argument that, look, Baylor kind of talked it out after that game, said, what's the problem? Why are we so, lackluster so far this year? And they did focus on the defensive end because it has not been as good this year for Baylor. And Conor and I have been hinting at it on this show for weeks. It's not been the same Baylor defense. And man, was it not the same Baylor defense against Marquette? That was an ugly game. You'd think they want to show up defensively, but I don't know if getting well defensively is going to happen when you have to play Gonzaga in such a short turnaround. So that's the concern here. And then at the same point in time, Conor, Gonzaga has been a little shaky at the defensive end as well. It goes back to some of these really rough performances they had at that end of the floor in their exhibition games prior to the start of the regular season. I can't bet an under with these two teams right now. I get it that it's 160. I get maybe pride has to set in for Baylor, and that because of that, they'll show up defensively. I can't bet on hope and what if and maybe this defense turns it around. I can only go on what I've seen. So I could only go over the total, and I actually lean Gonzaga here, less than 3. To me, Baylor is definitely not a team I'm looking to support with that defense after what I saw. And by the way, Baylor, is there going to be an option to take care of Timmy for Baylor in the low post, in and around the rim? Not so sure about that. It could be a tricky time of it, really hard time of it for Baylor to try to contain him tonight. What do you think here, Conor Mack? One of the games of the night, probably is the game of the night, Baylor, Gonzaga.
Yeah, big game here on the neutral floor. Should have more Gonzaga, fans there. Not too crazy of a travel to South Dakota. It's wild here. Everyone seems like Gonzaga. The tickets, the money, it's crazy how high this is. This line has not moved. 2.5. Little question there. You mentioned the total has gone down a little bit, but I see big money on this over. Yeah, how can you not want to take an under with these two defenses? I'm going to stay off the total here. Gonzaga still I have questions both these teams. You just ran through it. Both teams, 2 bad losses to Texas and Purdue, and then Baylor just getting ripped by Marquette. I think Baylor plays better here, and I don't think they want to move it off this 2.5 after all this money here on Gonzaga, because I think if you moved it to a full point and a half, 3.5, 4, you're going to see money come in on Baylor. I think Baylor's better. I don't know if that gets them a W here, but I'd look their way. I'd be on the other side. I'd take Baylor here.
All right, looking at Baylor here, bounce back spot, and we'll see if we're going to find out what kind of metal they have in them, because it's about as bad a loss as I've seen Baylor have in the last few years under Scott Drew against Marquette. We'll see if they rebound from that.
Real quick. There's first half, second half. There've been points. Both these teams kind of slow early, and second half, there's been a lot of points in between these two teams. Later in the second half.
It's
so look
exactly
at that,
right.
maybe.
Yeah, and I said that to Jimmy today too. If you like the under, maybe go first half as opposed to a full game in this one. And because the points do seem to roll after halftime more readily with both teams this year. All right, our final game of the marquee segment, Illinois and Maryland, a little Big Ten conference action on a Friday night here. Maryland 1.5 2-point favorites at home, 145.5 the total in this game. Lean Illinois, lean over. I mean, if I were to get involved, but I don't want to fall into that same situation we saw with Arizona last night, where I think Illinois is better than Maryland, but I also thought Arizona was better than Utah, and you're going on the road for the first time in a true road game. And look, Utah blew the doors off Arizona last night, really wire to wire. They led that game. Kind of feels that way about Illinois, Maryland for me. I want to take Illinois. I think they're better than Maryland, but it's their first true road game going on the road. It's never easy. Maryland's playing well here. And look, I think it's an upgrade. Mark Turgeon never did it for me at Maryland. I was never impressed with the direction of the program under him. They've got a proven winner now, Kevin Willard, coming over from Seton Hall, where he did a great job there for years. So I don't want to sell Maryland short. I don't think Maryland's played the tough schedule that Illinois has. And like I said, I still think Illinois got better personnel, but I don't want to sell Maryland short. They have looked damn impressive. All you can do is beat and play the teams on your schedule. And that's exactly what they've done, Maryland, and they've blown out a lot of their opponents as well. Including, I know Louisville's it's just a disgrace right now, but for Maryland to piss pump them the way they did earlier this week, don't sell Maryland short, and I'm not going to do that here. So while I lean Illinois, lean a little to the over, I'm going to stay off and just sit back and watch this game tonight. What do you think here, Connor? Illinois, Maryland?
Yeah, man, this is tough. Both these teams have played great basketball early on. You mentioned Maryland, whether it's beating down Miami, not just win 18. St. Louis, they pummeled too, and they're scoring, 80 points here. Illinois as well. I know once we get here, this type game, we can see an under. But right now with these two teams, I'd only look over. Once we start to get real deep into conference play, you start seeing these teams know each other and, unders happen. But right now, I could only look over in this game. And I think it is more of a coin flip. Tough one. Could go either way. I guess I'd lean Maryland a little bit, here at home, but just small.
Yeah, definitely. It's. I think it's well lined as well. They're definitely. You're right. Maryland's a little thin in the front court, so that Illinois size be able to make a difference. And like I said, they don't have Kofi Coburn anymore. But you've still got some trees down there that could make life tough. And I like what Illinois did. Like I've said a million times in terms of who they brought in the transfer portal. You bring in the likes of Matthew Mayer from a winning culture at Baylor and Terrence Shannon Jr. from Texas Tech. Winning programs in the Big 12. I mean, talk about a great job by Brad Underwood to reload this team for another strong season ahead. So, like I say, for that, I do think Illinois personnel-wise grades out better than Maryland. But again, Maryland's been on their home floor, and they've been impressive. So I don't want to sell them short, and that includes me not wanting to bet against them, I should say, here in this spot tonight. All right, that's the marquee games. It's going to be a shorter show today, guys. It's just a small card. It's a Friday, so we'll wrap it up in about 5 minutes or so. But first, games we didn't hit that you like, Connor, any that we didn't mention?
No, I thought this game was fascinating. Someone already asked it on here. I don't know if I can trust South Dakota State, but I think they have potential. I've been very impressed with Kent State already all year long with the classic 6-0, it's basically 7 everywhere, a game like this. I lean over. What did you think here, South Dakota State, Kent State?
I'm with you. I like actually, it's a bet for me. Not only a lean, it's a bet over the total. South Dakota State and Kent State. I do agree with that as well. My games that we didn't mention, I like App State +7 against Charlotte. I mentioned this on Jimmy's show. I like this team catching points. I've won with this team catching points a lot. They're off a frustrating loss to Furman, which is a really good basketball team, but they hung tough. They lost by 4 on their home court to a really good Furman Paladin squad the other night. And you got Charlotte coming off the big win in overtime against Davidson, and for them, it's kind of a negative spot. You're back home, you're laying, and I don't love the Charlotte offense enough to lay 7 with them in this game. They're off the win, maybe a little bit of a letdown spot. And meanwhile, you got App State in their preferred point spread role as underdogs after a loss to a good Furman team. I think it's a good spot, good matchup too. App State defense could really get after it here. I like them plus the points against Charlotte.
Man, I wanted to take App State. I like what Charlotte's done all year. So I'm off there. And we got this low total. I can't take the under there. I wanted to mention Mike Gim. I just saw his comment. Hey, Kent State, depends how they play these two teams, especially. They've played well defensively, have gone slower, they've gone up. So your under might be, I don't know, that's a bad play either. So I just wanted to shout that out.
Couple more, too, that I'm on tonight. I'm on Northeastern plus 11 against Georgia Tech. I've been going against Georgia Tech quite a bit this year. They played a lot of neutral games. Now they're back home laying a big. Northeastern's not great. I get it. But plus 11 I thought was worth a look there. I'm on the over with Northern Illinois and Idaho. Both those teams play with decent pace, and I trust them both more offensively than defensively. So I like the over there. I mentioned on Jimmy's show, I like this is a bet for me too. Eastern Kentucky, James Madison over 158. It's a very high total, but you're going to get a lot of points in that game. No question about that. I think both teams play extremely fast. Both teams will score. I like the over there. EKU, I should say, JMU in that one. Brown Bryant, I think, can get over the total. I'm always interested in Bryant Bulldogs overs. Even in the 150s, they are extremely potent offensively and play as fast as anybody. So I think that game can get into the 160s, Brown and Bryant. And other than that, Merrimack's taken a lot of money. I agree with that. They're always a live dog because how slow they play and how solid defensively they are. I think Merrimack home dog against Boston University is probably a good bet. I agree. I have a small piece of that as well. I also mentioned on Jimmy's show, Campbell plus the points and over against East Carolina. I think that game can just go over the total as well, along with Campbell plus the points. And the only other game I bet was a small shot with Towson minus 20 because I really think Long Island's that bad. And I don't know how they're going to score against that Towson defense. So those are all my looks for the Friday card, pretty much every one. Questions in the chat from anybody? Yeah, we mentioned the total there. Eastern Kentucky, James Madison. I lean James Madison on the side. But nothing I pulled the trigger with there in terms of the side. I only bet the total in that game. I mentioned NIU, Idaho for Nunya. I like the over. Any of those those two games, Conor Mack, EKU, JMU, Northern Illinois, Idaho, anything that you lean with there?
No, nothing.
Nothing there? All right, good stuff. We're not on Mercer, says Nunya here in this one against Kennesaw State. I don't like Mercer as much in the favorites role. Kennesaw State's been all over the map to me. I mean, they've had these, competitive efforts at times. They are 4-3 on the season. They took VCU down to the wire. They beat App State. That's a pretty solid win. They covered wire to wire at Florida against the Gators. Don't sell Kennesaw State short. I mean, I'm not crazy about laying 3.5 with Mercer against Kennesaw there. Didn't bet the game, but like I say, Kennesaw has been a good dog.
Yeah, it's so inconsistent on both sides. With Mercer, you mentioned that as a favorite. I even loved it, and I can't trust Kennesaw, so yeah, I'm off.
Yeah, Florida A&M against Georgia. Florida A&M's just, look, they're really, really rough. I'm always interested fading Georgia anytime they're laying 25, and I'm not a Mike White fan, but I pump the brakes doing it tonight with A&M. I just don't trust Florida A&M enough.
Yeah, I'm off there.
Yeah, and we mentioned saturated LSU. We both like Arlington a little bit. Me in particular like an Arlington plus the points there in that one. All right, there we go. That's Q&A. Thanks to everyone for sending in those questions. It's a light card for this Friday. We will wrap things up momentarily. We got best bets coming up after we hear from Manscaped and Southtown 101. Southtown 101, when you're in San Antonio, Texas, stop in. Great food, drinks, live music, DJs, karaoke, and manscaped.com. Promo code PubSports, 20% off your purchase with the promo code PubSports. Jake Burns, we talked Canisius Siena in the marquee games. I like Siena a little bit. Small bet. I just think they're a lot better on paper right now than Canisius. But I kept it small because the Metro Atlantic is wonky with bigger favorites. A lot of times they come up short. I'm going to make an exception, though, because I think Canisius is just in a world of hurt, dismal basketball team. So small bet there for me, Siena. And there you go. Glad I could answer the question. All right. Best bets to wrap up the week here on college basketball net profit for a Friday. Conor Mack, where are you going for best bet here on a Friday night?
I'm going Niagara. I'm taking the 13.5 against Iona. Just too many points between these two. I think they cover the number.
All right, Niagara, Purple Eagles plus 13.5 against Iona. Best bet here for Conor Mack on this Friday edition of the Net Profit Show. My best bet, I'm going back to those Pitt Panthers, plus 10 against NC State. I think it's just too many points there in that one. Pitt's been better since they got everybody healthy. And these are the things you look for in college basketball. It's going to look early in the season. Pitt didn't look so good. Well, it's amazing. You get everybody healthy, and look what they've done. You know, Northwestern is not the great team, but you go in there and you smack them down like that. Very impressive. I think they can have what it takes to hang tough here on the road against NC State. Pitt plus 10, my best bet here for this Friday Net Profit College Basketball Show. And that'll wrap up this edition of the College Basketball Net Profit Show. If you want our take on USC tonight, we're not going to give it to you now. Check out Hitting the Books. Did a whole video on that game. I'm going to make you work there, Chili Dog Dooley. You want our take on that game? Watch that video. It's up there on the channel.
It should be good, that game tonight. I think it's similar to the first one. I don't know if that many points, but I think we got a close one in that game, back and forth. Yeah, shout out Star Child. Yeah, it was a great card. I swept the board everywhere last night. Good 7-0.
Yeah, very good night for Conor Mack in college basketball. I had a solid night, but the best bet was disappointing. Washington State's off to this great start, and Oregon just pulls away in the second half. So
in the second, I
was disappointed. But hey, look, Oregon is not going to be like this in February and March, because I know Dana Altman. He's one of the absolute best of the best coaches in the country. They will be good again in February and March, Oregon. Mark my word. You're going to see Oregon's going to be a handful once we get later into the season. Right now, they're not great, but they're going to get better. And maybe last night was already a sign that maybe they're going to get better earlier than expected this year, this Oregon Ducks team. When you have a coach that good, you're going to expect your team to get better as the season goes on. Shout out to everybody in the chat. Hit the like button on the way out. Make sure you tune in to the channel. We've got Dabby Cab, Razor Sharp, live bet stream, Utah USC, Pac-12 championship game, college football tonight. We've got Pub Hub college football, me, Conor Mack, DJ Big Boss, Big Ragu tomorrow, 10 a.m. Eastern. We'll get you ready for the conference championship Saturday in college football. We got UFC streams this weekend, NFL Pub Hub on Sunday, NFL Sunday night and Monday night football streams. Huge weekend here on Pub Sports Radio. And make sure you become a member for just $4.99 a month, a member of the Pub Sports Radio YouTube channel. That's a wrap for Conor Mack. I'm Ian Cameron. Have a great Friday night. Enjoy the games and good luck. And we will talk to you again Monday for a brand new week of the Net Profit College Basketball Show right here on Pub Sports Radio.